When I was a child, my father would take me along to visit an old lady he befriended. She lived alone with a white cat, and so I called her Velle Pune, which means white cat in Tamil. My father would bring her food, sit down with her for some time, and talk to her. Velle Pune didn't have anyone to care for her because she'd been abandoned by her family. She lived alone, didn't speak much English, and was increasingly isolated in Singapore, a country that was racing towards becoming a metropolis. What can we do? In this podcast, I meet people who are putting their ideas into action and focusing on the good they can do for their neighbors, communities, citizens, and the world. My guest today is Anita Howell, founder of Perpetual Blooms. Anita repurposes event flowers into individual gifts for people going through a challenging time in their lives.
I rehydrate them, I snip them, I tidy them up and make them look beautiful again. So doing all of that and delivering it to the charity, and each posy is tagged and it with a note. The person receiving it needs to receive something beautiful and something thoughtful, and I want each posy to be something that would make them feel special. It is a completely sustainable process, and I close the circle. What I do is I go back after a week or however many days, and I pick up all the spent flowers and the vases, and I compost all the greenery and foliage and flowers, and I recycle all the jars and use them again.
These flowers are sent to nursing homes, charities, shelters, or anyone whose day needs brightening. The brightness just keeps spreading.
Sometimes I've been there and seen the reaction on people's faces, and it's very heartwarming and just such a pleasure to be there to see them. Like a women's shelter that I deliver to very regularly, the staff are so overjoyed to be able to give their clients and residents something personal. They're very good at taking care of them on a daily basis, taking care of their needs and looking after them in that way, but the budgets don't go to the little personal pleasures that we take for granted.
Perpetual Blooms started in something of an unlikely place, in Anita's home.
My mother she's been a really big part of who I am today. She used to run an orphanage in India, and she's a very strong woman, a very wise woman. She's always hammered into me all my life, be kind, be generous, and don't waste. Mum was all about don't waste. That kind of thinking, I guess, has been with me all my life, and it was just a natural way of thinking. How can I be kind in life? It doesn't cost anything to think that way. You know, if I'd complain or whinge, she'd always say, you know, you've got so much to be thankful for. There are so many people that have so much less than you. She'd always bring me back down to earth and make me realise that what I was complaining about was pretty petty.
Keen to help in the best way she could, Anita wanted to try her hand at nursing. She started by volunteering.
And my first ever volunteer role, I was asked to collect all the dentures of all the residents and clean them. And just being so green and not knowing anything, I got all the dentures and I tipped them all into the sink, and I was cleaning them, and then I realised I didn't know whose dentures went.
Once Anita had worked through that minor problem, she spent 8 years as a nurse before moving on to become an event manager.
I studied and I started off just learning office work because I'd never done it, and learning how a business worked. And that's how I got into it. And then I slowly migrated into the event field.
Now in the event field, no pun intended, in the job of her dreams, Anita started to notice how much waste there was and the carbon footprint that each event was leaving behind.
A lot of my events, I would use flowers because flowers tell a story. Flowers can transform a room, and they set the mood. And that was one of the tools I used often to make my events successful. The downside of that was at the end of the event, they just go to waste. And they're expensive, and the florists have spent hours, and they're only there for a few hours. And whether it's a wedding or a beautiful gala dinner, the flowers end up usually in the general waste at the end of the night.
Be kind, be generous, don't waste, were her mother's words. Anita thought hard and found a natural link between her old and current jobs. That's where the seeds for Perpetual Blooms were sown, I guess.
Just drawing on my nursing experience, I knew there were people that were isolated and lonely and didn't have the family support we all take so for granted and enjoy. And I thought, wow, that'd be so wonderful to be able to take these flowers and then give it to someone who hasn't got that support and let them know that someone out there is thinking about them. And it would be a great way to reduce the waste from events. It would be a sustainable process. And then that was the thinking around, how do I make this less work for anyone else and make it sustainable so that it's not going to be a bigger load on our environment, and then also help a situation in our community and brighten the day of someone that is going through a challenging time.
Anita feels her mother's advice is more relevant than ever, especially today.
Aging can isolate you, being in a nursing home and not having those, because your family's moved away or you've moved away from your family, and now you find yourself aging and in an aged care facility. That can be isolating. So many people in Australia that are travelling, that are working here for long periods of time, that all of a sudden find themselves with serious illness and they haven't got the contacts and they're isolated. This is the right thing for me right now, and I think it fits the way society is.
Anita started her business unsure if it would work or how much time and commitment it would take outside of her day job.
Being an event manager and the skills that I've used and honed over the years really did play a big part in the initial setup and made it a lot easier for me to get started, because I know how to break down a project and I know how to investigate what steps need to happen to deliver. I guess learning about flowers and learning the process of arrangement has been something I've never done before. I've, done some courses in flower arrangement, and because I want to deliver a great product, I don't want it to look any less than a beautiful bunch that anybody else would receive from a florist.
Anita has dedicated herself to focusing on what she can do. On the way, some lovely stories have come back to her, giving her an idea of what her services have meant to so many people.
I went to talk to the CEO of Chris O'Brien Lifehouse, and I took her a little posy. As we chatted, she asked if I would mind if she passed on the posy to one of her clients. A couple of days later, she emailed me and said that as she was going up the lift to deliver the posy, she actually met someone else. And this lady that had been up from the country, from Central Australia, with her husband who was receiving cancer treatment. And she had spent 6 weeks in the hospital with her husband while he received his treatment. She was quite teary and looking quite worn down. The CEO was talking to her and said, look, would you like this posy of flowers? I know it's not a lot, but I'd like you to have it. And this woman the tears just flowed, because she said, you don't know how much this means to me. She said, my husband and I are flower farmers, and we've been removed from that environment and all our friends for 6 weeks now. And this posy just has lifted me so much and given me hope that we will go back one day and be on that farm and with our family again. So that's the impact.
Anita wishes she could do more of these types of events and services, but it takes time and a lot of patience. One of the biggest hurdles is pitching her service to companies.
I've spent a bit of time with you now and told you a few stories, and I think you're getting the feel for the impact. But to do that over a short phone call, like a cold call, it's really difficult to get the necessity of the sustainability of it. And then this beautiful story at the end of it, because they've chosen to do something that's great for the environment, they're also having this amazing social impact as well. That's my biggest challenge.
Anita is willing to put the time in because this is something she believes in at the core of who she is.
Push those nerves away and make those cold calls and deal with the rejection and come back again. And because now I know it works. I know people's lives are being impacted, and I know I've saved tons of waste.
Anita tells me, you don't have to set up a business to impact someone's life. Lives are changed in far simpler ways.
I say just take time to listen to people and to connect. Like just a good morning, how you going? Ask someone how they are and then just listen. It's about actually just listening and letting that person know that you're listening. A touch.
Yeah.
You know, some people don't get touched. And I don't mean intimately. I mean just a hand on a shoulder. It's something we all take for granted, right? You never know who is experiencing what. We're very good at masking what's really happening.
If you do want to set up something that contributes in the way of impacting society, Anita talks about her own experience.
Googled a lot.
Okay.
About everything I thought I might need to learn, and listened to podcasts of other people who had started small enterprises, wrote to people, talked to people, spoke to anybody I could learn from. Just became a sponge, really, trying to find information of what it takes, what you need to know. People love to help, and I've found so many people that have been just so generous to me with their knowledge and their experience. And I'm just so thankful for all the support I've received and encouragement. Make sure you've thought through the process. Make sure you've done your homework. Don't give up easily. Don't be put off by the no's. The yeses will come.
Anita believes she will get where she wants to go. Slowly but surely. She's in this for the long haul, committed to making an impact where she can, big or small. She has set out her ambition for Perpetual Blooms.
I would really love to be able to employ people with a disability and older Australians that need to reskill. I would love to have this huge workforce of people reskilling and learning skills. I just want to make it more sustainable, bring employment to people who are finding it difficult to find employment, and spreading the love. Spread the love.
I left Anita with my own posy of flowers. In a recycled glass jar on the kitchen table, they brightened our home for a good week after the interview. When the flowers reached their end of life, I was reluctant to throw them into the bin like I'd usually do. These particular flowers signified so much more. An aspiration for a kinder, more compassionate and considerate world. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to spread the love with flowers and reduce the waste from your event, Perpetual Blooms is on Instagram. You can reach out to Anita at info@perpetualblooms.com.au. If you liked this podcast, please follow or rate it on any of the following platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and Anchor. You can also stay up to date with new episodes on our Facebook page, www.facebook.com/whatcanwedo.podcast. This podcast was produced by me, Prema Menon, with the help of my script editor, Lisa Nadolski.